Welcome to the Holding Hope podcast, where we explore social emotional health topics with a focus on supporting the well-being of children, families, and childcare providers. Before we begin, we want to emphasize that this podcast is meant to share experiences and provide resources. Holding Hope and our guests do not offer professional diagnosis or medical advice. The insights and stories shared by our infant early childhood education mental health consultants and our guests are based on their personal experiences. Every child and family is unique. It's important to consult with a healthcare provider to make decisions that are best for the families and children in your care. As you listen, we hope you will find valuable information, but remember that you are also the expert. We encourage you to take what resonates and seek professional guidance when it comes to making important choices about your family's health.
Hi, everyone. My name is Erica Larson. I'm a mental health consultant for Eastern Washington in the Holding Hope program.
My name is Andrea Garcia, and I'm also in the Eastern Washington region, and I also work for Holding Hope as well.
Hello, thanks for having me. My name is Sonia Shine. I am a mental health consultant with Holding Hope out of Southwest Washington, Vancouver.
Today, we sort of are going to dive into the topic of self-care because we've learned in our work with our providers and parents and families that this is a really big topic of discussion. It sort of exists, but no one really addresses it or talks about this in detail. So we are going to sort of go in there and see what this feels like. Would one of you just want to start sort of where this is present in your practice or where you've noticed it? Maybe we can start there. Would that be okay?
So I guess for me, I appreciate this topic because it is so unspoken about in society. And I mean, especially as we're talking about mental health consultation, social emotional well-being and development of children, staff, families. When I bring up self-care in conversation and consultation with teachers, directors, providers, like that's not something that they think about. I just had a conversation with a new assistant director this week, or no, it's only Tuesday, last week. Where it's like, she's managing all of these things. And I'm like, well, where are you in all of this? And she's like, well, what do you mean? And I'm like, well, you've got a lot on your plate. Like, what does taking care of yourself look like? And she's like, I have no idea. So I think these are just really important conversations. And
Sonia, when I'm hearing you talk about how self-care doesn't come up, it's often a last thought or not even a thought for our providers. I also am thinking about the idea of what self-care means to everybody. Often when I bring up the idea of self-care to providers, they think of, doing something nice for yourself, right? Like take a bath, get your nails done, go out to lunch. And sometimes it takes more effort to sort of shift the belief around self-care, right? So instead of it being an event or a thing, it's like more about what fills you up, what rejuvenates you, helps you have connection. Sometimes it means just making sure you get enough sleep or taking time for yourself to eat because that's important and we need to be well rested and fed in order to keep our own regulation throughout the day. And the other thing that comes up a lot is boundaries for me when I'm talking about self-care, because so many of the providers that I work with, when we talk about self-care, are always like, when am I going to have time for that? Right. And so really helping shift a perspective and a lens to think about what it means for all of our time to be just as important as everybody else's, and the same with our needs to be just as important. And how can we start to prioritize that? And how can we help providers start to prioritize that so that they have some more balance, so that they are able to do things for themselves, to take care of themselves, so that they can keep caring for everyone like they do?
This strikes a chord for me for sure when you talk about this, Erica, because it brings me to a consultation I had last week with one of the directors. But before I talk about that, this brings me back to the first thought we had around boundaries and self-care, and how just the two connected can feel kind of like this inability to do so, like a radical idea that we're bringing to the table about our own needs being just as important, like you said, Erica. And when I think of it in this term, it makes it really clear that we are yes people. We want to be yes people, but sometimes yes people means that we cross our own boundaries. I want to be here for others, and I want to be here in the way that I'd want somebody to be there for me, but that also comes with boundaries, right? And learning about our own can be really helpful. But this reminded me of my provider that I seen last week, and we had specifically been talking around like staff conversations and how she was going to share some hard things with her. And we talked a lot about the phone and the cell phone usage. And I talked to her about, well, when was this? She's like, oh, it was on a Saturday. I'm like, oh, a Saturday? Oh, okay. Well, what were you doing? Hopefully didn't take too much of your time for work. And she's like, no, I was just like watching a game or something. But she reached out to me, and I didn't feel like I couldn't answer her because I didn't want her to think that she didn't matter, and I wanted to answer her. And I'm like, oh, I can see your thoughts around this, but I also feel like, where does that leave you in being able to really disconnect and be with the people you want to be with, and have that time for yourself? And she looked at me and said, well, this is like relationship work, and I don't want to not answer her. I'm like, oh, okay. Then this crazy idea comes in my mind about relationships, and when we have close relationships and the relational work we do, and how they can all be interconnected, but also how sometimes our thoughts around relationships and boundaries can be even harder. So that's also self-care, right? I need boundaries to feel safe when I'm going to have fun. And without them, it kind of feels kind of scary. So that really struck a chord with me when you said that, Erica, about really shifting the narrative to talk about self-care and boundaries and how they can be really connected. So,
Drea, when you were talking about, being a yes person, right? That's something when I personally was learning about all of this that I really struggled with too, right? Because you do want to help and you do want to be supportive, and then you end up doing much more than maybe you really have capacity for. So when I was practicing just not saying yes, I needed something else to say, right? And so I learned to say, let me think about it and get back to you. Because my natural response was yes, and I definitely wasn't comfortable saying no, right? So I had to find something in between where it's like, let me think about it and I'll get back to you, which gave me time to pause and reflect of like, okay, do I actually have capacity to do this? Is this something I want to do, right? Is this something that won't take too much from me, and sort of block space out that way? So that was my little tag for how I started to practice.
Oh my gosh. I think Erica just gave me, she just gave me a life hack here. I need to learn how to use a different phrase. I can use that because no can feel really hard for me too, especially as a consultant. Like I found that in this work, I really do want to be responsive. And we know that immediacy can sometimes build relationship, right? But also immediacy can also put out unrealistic expectations, right? Or results that they want from you, but we can't have. So I love that life hack. Let me think about it. I will use that.
As you were talking, I was just really thinking of how these behaviors that we do, how we want to respond quickly to make sure everyone is okay, is sort of ingrained sometimes in some of us, and that we're not really always paying attention how that affects us. And I have seen this with the providers that I support, where they're sitting with me and they are feeling exhausted, and we're not paying attention to how this much that we're carrying is affecting not just spend our time. You're not seeing my kids, or you're not spending time with your partner, but also how this affects your health, where you're not connecting that anymore because it becomes almost a new normal. Like you have adapted to be tired all of the time, and you've normalized the headaches, you've normalized all of this, and how we can sort of get stuck there if we're not paying attention to the whole picture. Like we've moved so much away from that because I've heard I don't have time for that, from my providers. It's like that's not something I get to do. I don't get to self-care. So that really worries me.
These conversations around self-care always make me think about the analogy, you're on an airplane and the flight attendant is going through the whatever airplane procedure things. And what do they always say when the oxygen masks fall? Parents, caregivers, put the masks on yourself first before you put it on your little people or the people that you're caring for. And I always ask providers, like, why do they say that? Right? That's that self-care piece. And I just, and I have to remind myself that too. Like, this is something that I have to remind myself, that it's not just about finding time to prioritize myself, but I'm actively making time to prioritize myself. Because if I'm trying to find time, like I'm not putting myself at the forefront. I'm putting everything else ahead of me. I'm putting my work, my child, my family, all these different pieces of myself that are important. But I'm not going to be as effective in that if I'm not giving myself oxygen. And it's that reminder, that I have to remind myself too. And it's hard, easier said than done. But how do we remind ourselves? How do we invite those that we work with and support? What does your oxygen mask look like?
I think that really brings in the other aspect of self-care that's been coming up more and more for me, is to really shift the perspective around it's not just self-care, right? It's not all on the individual. So, Sonia, when you're talking about us knowing, what is it for our coworkers or what is it for our loved ones, how can we create community care or organizational care, right? Where inside our community, whether we're talking about our family community, our friend community, like our neighborhood community, the community that we have at work, in Eastern, one of the things that we've done is created a time for our team to get together, reflect, support each other. Sometimes it's serious, right? Sometimes it's not. Sometimes we're staffing cases. But it's a time for us to connect and get what we need from the group. And we know we can come together and be supported, because the rest of the time when we're out there, usually we're on our own and we're doing really hard work. So what systems do we have in place, right, to make sure that there's structure around taking care of ourselves? when I know I need to take time off and I talk to my boss about it and they say, good, I'm glad that you're taking care of yourself, right? Rather than a negative response or being met with feeling like guilty or shamed, are we working in environments where that can happen? And I think that that's very difficult in childcare. I feel like staffing is a huge issue and has been for a while now. So, what can we do in our community? What can we do for our providers to provide a different lens and help them feel supported and make sure that as a whole they're getting what they need?
This makes me really think of a couple different things, really. Thank you, Erica, for this. The thoughts around community care, I feel like coming from the Latina part of myself, was something that I grew up with and I didn't know I had until I came into spaces such as we have now when we're professionals, and really learning about how that community care can still be there for us in the spaces that we hold, but also in my background for coming together, it was something normal. You did it all the time. I don't know if this happens in any other homes that are Latinos, but relatives would come over and you would eat and you'd have what we call cafecito and pan dulce, like you'd have it together and you'd share time and you'd share about your week, what's new. And that was a part of me growing up, learning about that. That was connection, and that is self-care, being together. So I love that part for community care, but also for like our providers. This reminds me of one of the providers I had in Walla Walla, where we talked about, her staff was consistently at work. She had low turnover, and I was like, man, you're like a little unicorn over here. So tell me what you're doing, right? And that director talked really about presenting the day with opportunities to feed her staff, check in with her staff, be present with them. And I thought that was amazing because it was a conscious effort to be alongside them, and that community care that she was trying to build inevitably upheld itself. And that was loads to her staff retention. So
sometimes you just want to be by yourself. Sometimes you just need to breathe. And this happens when you're stretched so thin from all sorts of directions. This could be from your own nuclear family. This could be from your community or your work, that sometimes you just need 5 minutes and 5 minutes to just be in quiet and breathe a few minutes. And if you are aware of that, if you can somehow take a sort of a distance away from what you're doing, take a step back and notice that where you're at, how you're feeling, and then take a pause. What if we take a pause more than once a day, twice, 3 times a day? I think those pauses can be so healthy and so helpful, where we can just say, I'm going to take a pause. I'm going to take a 15-minute pause and I'm going to come back and maybe make this a normal, sort of a really simple idea, I think, of remembering that you can just do something very simple throughout your day. Now, for me, the boundaries I struggle with. So I'm not one to really focus on that, or have any real tips. I don't know, Erica or Sonia, have on this. This is something I always struggle with, setting boundaries for myself, because we've been taught, yes, you have to, you say yes, like you mentioned, and always, for me, at least in my culture, having to prove that you are worthy of, that you can do things constantly. Having to prove that is something that is also very much, I think, I don't know if it's cultural exactly, maybe it's just human to want to be helpful and to feel that your work or your worth is in what you do.
That's so beautiful. I love the idea of taking time to hold hope for ourselves. So I'm trying to think about different ways that I've seen this done, or that I practice this. I hear often that there's not enough time, right? But sometimes the time that you need might be 30 seconds or 2 minutes of space in the bathroom to take 3 deep breaths and just be able to refocus or recenter. In times like that, I know people who use scents or essential oils when they breathe in because it's something that soothes them, right? Something that's tactile. So if you like the way something feels, when I was training as a therapist, I learned to do body scans in between each client so that I could let go of one session before moving in to the next with another person, kind of helping with self-awareness. So those are small things, right, that I think are less, well, maybe easier. Easy is not the right word. Easier to implement in our day. More difficult things for me was like learning to prioritize time for myself. Like Elena, I like time by myself and I need that. I'm an introvert, so I recharge when I'm by myself. Even though I love connecting with people, it's very important for me to have my own space and time. And so I started scheduling it. And in the beginning, I would schedule it and then I would schedule over the top of it because it still like didn't feel important enough. And I've gotten better, right, at being able to hold that space or really assess, like, is this really something that I want to give up my time for? Because sometimes it is, right? Like sometimes there's times with friends or with family or other things that you're like, okay, this is worth, like, I want to go do this. But it allows me, if I have a plan for that, when somebody says, oh, can you help with this? Or do you have plans? I can say, yes, I have plans. And I don't have to say anything else because I do have plans. I plan to be by myself, recharging. So not everybody can do that, right? That looks different for everyone, but that's something that's worked for me.
I'm thinking about this conversation with this director or assistant director that I had last week that I talked about at the beginning. And as we engaged in our conversation about this idea of self-care, she kind of engaged in this self-reflection process for herself and discovered that, you know what, I do engage in self-care when I ask my husband to, you know, you got everything, you got the kids, like you're good to go. Great. I'm going to go to bed early tonight. You know, and yeah, just that, like, and applauding her for advocating for herself, like recognizing that this is something that I need. I need my me time. Yeah, and that she had that support in her own personal life to, you know, to lean on that person, or you know, whether it's a husband, a partner, friend, whatever it might be. Those people that we can lean on to just allow us to take care of ourselves. And I thought that was really powerful that, you know, we kind of started this conversation, or that I started this conversation with her last week about, well, what does self-care look like for you? Well, I don't have self-care. And then for her, you know, 10, 15 minutes later to have this realization that, oh yeah, I do have that. And this is what it looks like for me. So I was really proud of her for, you know, just joining that process and recognizing that value in that self-care practice that she had for herself, and the people in her life that supports that for her. It's really powerful. And this is making me think about kind of how does this, like, we're talking about self-care practices, and it's making me think about like, how could some of these things be implemented in the classroom too? I think somebody talked about like breathing exercises and, how can we engage, or a body scan? Erica, you talked about a body scan. Like are these things that we can implement at circle time as we're getting ready to transition to outside, or we're coming back from inside, or whatever that transition might look like. I need this 2 minutes to take care of myself, and I'm going to invite you to join me in this process so that we all can kind of engage in this, to use what you were talking about, just community building exercises to take care of ourselves in our classroom community. It just made me think about we can take care of ourselves while also modeling care with others too.
Yes. And when we do it in classrooms, it's helping build the skill of emotional regulation through co-regulation with kids, right? And then when all their little nervous systems sync up together, the ones who struggle more feel more attuned and aligned and regulated thanks to everybody else. So yes, please practice it in your classrooms with everyone, right? Even if they're the fun little breathing videos, or first there's an activity like a Go Noodle video, right? And then you do a couple deep breaths after that. Conscious discipline has all the fun ones, the pretzel and the drain and the balloon that kids love to do. So it's kind of like whatever works for you guys, even if it's just the teachers doing it together to support each other. Like it's okay for the teachers to take a pause together just to recenter.
I wanted to share this. I pulled this out from the rest desk this morning, and I thought this was beautiful. If I may share this, it says, I am asking for divine grace and rest to cover me. I will anoint myself with rest. And I want to invite you, like you shared, Sonia, to do this with me. So sit, stand, or lie down in a comfortable position. Place your hand over your heart and breathe slowly. In a culture focused on hyper-productivity, it can feel uncomfortable to be still and do nothing. Just letting silence wash over you, cultivate a space for silence right now. It can be a few seconds, it can be a minute, a lifetime. Trust your body. With your hands over your heart, repeat. Grind culture cannot have me. I will resist. I will rest. Keep slowly repeating this to yourself. Slow down each word until it covers you. And this is rest.
Thank you, Elena. I'm such a big fan of the rest deck. It's great reminders for us. And sometimes another way to do a little self-check-in and grounding in the middle of the day.
Yes, I need a rest deck too.
If there's nothing else that comes to mind, something that kind of you would like to sort of bring back, kind of a keynote, if you would like to share this last sort of, this is what I want you to take, or like a little something I want to gift you, what would that be, so we can close today?
I have one that I'm taking away with me today. I'm taking self-care as a small day-by-day shift in small ways to give myself peace. So whether it be taking a minute to breathe or to eat a snack, because I love snacks, I will commit to eating my snack, enjoying my snack, and saying it's okay to rest. And I'm going to resist. What did it say? I love everything. One more time. Grind culture will not take me. I'm going to take
from
that.
Today I will continue.
And I'm going to resist. And I'm going to rest.
Think about not just self-care, but community care, and how we can build cultures of community care in the places that we work, live, and support each other so that the grind culture isn't the norm.
And I'm thinking about making time.
I want to remember, I'm going to remember, I have plans. That's it. That's it. I have plans. And those plans are to take care of myself for 5 minutes. I love that. Thank you so much for being here and for sharing your thoughts, your ideas, your tips. I really enjoyed this conversation. And we'll be in touch again soon. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Talk soon.
Yes, thank you, Lena. Mm-hmm.